Sometimes animals show up where you might not expect them. Some escape from captivity, others are introduced on purpose, and a few just wander too far from home, all on their own. In this video, we're taking a look at some of the strangest cases of non-native and feral animals that have been spotted in Europe. Walruses are normally found in the cold waters of the Arctic, primarily along the coasts of Greenland, Canada, Alaska, and northern Russia. But every so often, one turns up much further south than normal, causing quite a commotion and making international news. In 2021, a young male dubbed Wally the Walrus made headlines as he traveled down the coasts of Ireland and the United Kingdom before crossing over to France and Spain and then crossing back to the Isles of Scilly off the southwest coast of Great Britain. Along the way, he was seen hauling out on docks and boats, but in Scilly, he began to be a bit more of a problem. He was damaging the small vessels as he tried to climb aboard, and on occasion, he would even cause them to sink. This led local authorities to place a pontoon in St. Mary's Harbor just for him. Eventually, Wally made his way back up the coast of the United Kingdom, and in the fall, he was seen for the last time as he swam along the coast of Iceland, making his way back to the Arctic. But not all walruses that venture into Europe are as lucky. Rheas was a female walrus that was seen in the waters of many northwestern European countries between 2021 and 2022. Just like Wally, she too would climb aboard small boats to rest, often damaging and occasionally sinking them. As she gained popularity through the media, she began to draw huge crowds. The people who went to see her would often get far too close as they snapped pictures, and they regularly threw things at her. Norwegian authorities repeatedly warned the public to keep a safe distance and leave Rheas alone, but these warnings were constantly ignored. They became worried that she had become habituated to people, and due to her massive size, it would only take one wrong move for her to possibly cause a fatality. In August of 2022, they made the controversial decision to kill her for the sake of public safety, a decision that many criticized as being too hasty, as other options such as relocation didn't appear to have even been considered. Rheas are large flightless birds related to other ratites like ostriches and emus, and native to the grasslands of South America. But in northern Germany, greater rheas have become an unexpected part of the ecosystem. It began when a small group escaped from a private enclosure near Lübeck in the early 2000s. Before they could be recaptured, they disappeared into the countryside, and to the amazement of many, they began to establish themselves in the wild. It turned out that the open fields and meadows of the region, especially around the Schalsee Biosphere Reserve, were a surprisingly good fit for these South American birds. What's especially interesting is how well they've adapted to German winters. Although greater rheas are generally found in warmer regions within their native range, in the southern portion of that range, they regularly experience frost and snow. Their thick plumage provides some insulation, and because they're generalist feeders, the feral population has been able to forage on winter crops, grasses, and leftover grains. By the late 2010s, the feral population had grown to as many as 600 birds, and farmers were becoming increasingly frustrated by crop damage. Public opinion became divided. Some locals appreciated the novelty of seeing these large birds roaming freely, while others viewed them as invasive pests. In 2018, wildlife authorities began to allow egg removal and culling in an effort to control the population. As a result, numbers have declined, and in 2024, there were only an estimated 50 breeding adults still surviving in the wild in Germany. Flamingos are generally associated with tropical climates, but greater flamingos have a native range that extends into southern Europe, mainly around the Mediterranean coast, where they breed in large colonies in countries like Spain, Italy, and southern France. But far from those warm lagoons, a small population has become established somewhere unexpected, on the border between Germany and the Netherlands. In the 1980s, flamingos started showing up at the Svillbrücke, a wetland near the city of Rheas in western Germany. This area along the Dutch border includes shallow lakes and marshes that are ideal for wading birds. The flamingos are believed to have been escapees from private collections or zoos, and initially no one thought that they would survive the winter. When the cold winter months finally came, the flamingos disappeared. Whether they had flown away or died, no one was certain, but to everyone's surprise, the following spring, the flamingos reappeared and began to breed in the marshes. This happened every year, and over time, a small breeding colony formed, and it can still be found there today. While the population mainly consists of greater flamingos, the group includes several other species that have also escaped from nearby zoos. A group of Chilean flamingos have been observed in the wetlands. They were first recorded at the site in 1982, and by the following year, they too were breeding in the wild alongside the greater flamingos. A few Caribbean flamingos have also been seen joining the flock, as well as lesser flamingos, a species normally found only in Africa and South Asia. Some years, as many as 50 flamingos return to the site to breed, where they nest alongside black-headed gulls. Despite the colder climate, they've successfully raised chicks in the area for decades, and while the different species mostly keep to themselves, there have been a few confirmed cases of hybrid chicks. DNA evidence has shown that some of the birds have joined the flock from the wild, likely during their winter migrations. It's believed that the flamingos migrate to warmer parts of southern Europe in the winter before returning to the same wetland each spring. Though not truly native to the region, these flamingos are now considered the most northerly wild flamingo population in the world. They've adapted well and have become a local curiosity for birdwatchers on both sides of the border. Wallabies are medium-sized marsupials native to Australia, but over the past century, they've established surprising footholds in several parts of Europe. Red-necked wallabies, in particular, have adapted well to European conditions, thanks in part to the fact that their native range in southeastern Australia and Tasmania sees winters that can bring frost and even snow. One of the best-known populations lives in the Forêt de Rambouillet, a forest southwest of Paris. In the 1970s, several red-necked wallabies escaped from a wildlife park after a storm damaged their enclosure. Rather than recapture them all, authorities let them be, and the animals adapted surprisingly well to the temperate French woodland. In its peak, the population numbered around 100 individuals, though in recent years it has declined due to predation and harsh winters. Still, sightings occur, and the wallabies remain semi-established in the area. In southern England, especially around the Peak District and Ashdown Forest, wallabies have been spotted for decades. A population once lived at Rodine School near Brighton, and another in Staffordshire persisted for over 50 years. Most of these groups are now either extinct or very small, but occasional sightings still occur. Wallabies have also been reported in Italy, Germany, and Luxembourg, though most of these are either short-lived populations or one-off escapees. However, in Scotland and the Republic of Ireland, there are two island populations of wallabies that stand out. In Loch Lomond, the island of Inchconnehan, known locally as Wallaby Island, has a small population. It dates back to introductions in the 1940s. Historically, there were around 60 individuals living there, but their numbers dropped after planned culls to protect island flora were carried out. Despite these efforts to control them, recent surveys estimate that somewhere between 20 and 30 wallabies still live there. Meanwhile, on Lambay Island near Dublin, there's another population. Introduced in the 1950s and bolstered by zoo releases in the 1980s, this secluded island in the Irish Sea now supports as many as 50 wallabies that live in the dense vegetation and sustain themselves without any human intervention. The American bullfrog is native to the eastern United States and parts of Canada, where it lives in freshwater habitats like ponds, lakes, and marshes. But today, it's also found in parts of Europe, where it has become a highly destructive, invasive species. In the 20th century, American bullfrogs were introduced to Europe for frog lake farming. Their large size made them ideal for food production, and they were raised in open-air enclosures. But over time, many of these frogs escaped, and in some cases, they are even believed to have been intentionally released into the wild. Once established, they proved incredibly difficult to remove. Bullfrogs are voracious predators that feed on anything that they can fit in their mouths, including insects, fish, other amphibians, birds, and even small mammals. A single female can lay up to 20,000 eggs in a season, giving them a major advantage over many native frog species. In places like northern Italy and southwestern France, they've spread across lowland waterways and irrigation ditches, displacing native species and altering wetland ecosystems. In Italy, research has shown that bullfrogs actively prey upon and outcompete the Italian pool frog, with stomach content and isotope studies revealing bullfrogs dominating the same food and habitat niches. Similarly, in Greece and Italy, the bullfrog's voracious appetite and larger body size disrupt local amphibian populations through direct predation and competition. On Crete, American bullfrogs introduced to Agia Lake led to the local extinction of the endemic Cretan frog within only a few years. And despite control efforts, the bullfrogs continue to thrive in many of these areas. Today, American bullfrogs are considered the most invasive amphibian species in Europe, where their presence is no longer just a curiosity, but a serious and ongoing conservation concern. The Coypu, also known as the Nutria, is a large, semi-aquatic rodent native to South America. With its long rat-like tail, shaggy brown fur, and distinctive orange teeth, it looks like an overgrown muskrat. In the early 20th century, Coypus were brought to Europe for fur farming. Their dense underfur was highly prized, and they were bred in large numbers across the continent. But when the fur market collapsed, many animals escaped or were simply released, and they soon began to establish wild populations. Today, Coypus are found in many parts of Europe. They thrive in wetlands and along rivers and canals, where they dig burrows into banks and feed on aquatic vegetation, crops, and roots. Their impact on the environment has been devastating. Their constant grazing strips away native plants, and their burrowing weakens levees, dikes, and irrigation structures, increasing the risk of flooding and erosion. Coypus are also highly prolific. A single female can raise multiple litters each year, making control efforts especially challenging. In places like Italy's Po Valley and Germany's Rhineland, they've become a serious agricultural pest, damaging cornfields and sugar beet crops near the waterways where they live. Efforts to reduce their numbers have included large-scale culling programs and habitat monitoring. Despite these efforts, the Coypu has managed to become one of Europe's most persistent and destructive invasive animals. The African sacred ibis is a large wading bird native to sub-Saharan Africa and parts of the Middle East. Easily recognized by its white plumage, black head, and long down-curved bill, it was once worshipped in ancient Egypt as a sacred symbol of the god Thoth. But in modern Europe, the sacred ibis has taken on a different reputation as an invasive species. In the 20th century, sacred ibises were imported for zoos and bird parks, especially in France, where several were kept in large, open enclosures. But in the 1990s and early 2000s, some escaped or were released, and they began breeding in the wild. The wetlands of western France provided the perfect conditions, and by the late 2000s, the wild population had grown into the thousands. The ibises spread across Western and Southern Europe, having been recorded in many different countries. In several places, they formed localized breeding colonies, returning seasonally in small but persistent numbers. Their success is thanks to their adaptability. Sacred ibises are opportunistic feeders that consume everything from insects and frogs to fish, carrion, and bird eggs. While this has allowed them to easily adapt to new environments, it's also part of why their presence is so concerning to ecologists. In the sensitive wetland ecosystems where they've established themselves, they may have a seriously negative impact, as they're known to raid the nests of native and endangered birds, as well as consume a variety of other vulnerable species. France initiated a large-scale culling and egg destruction campaign in 2006, and similar control efforts have been undertaken in Italy and Spain. These programs have reduced some of the larger populations, but sightings continue to occur across Europe. Sacred ibises are now listed on the EU Invasive Alien Species Regulation list, restricting their breeding, release, and transport within EU member nations. And that's it for this week's video. What other strange species are living in Europe that people might not suspect? And what continent should I cover next? I need to say a huge thanks to my patrons. Without their ongoing support, I wouldn't be able to make a video like this every week. If you want to support the channel, consider joining us on Patreon. The link is in the video description below. Or consider becoming a member here on YouTube by hitting the join button below the video. Members get access to exclusive perks like early video releases, special badges, and custom emojis to use in comments. Your support helps me to keep making the best content that I can. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.